number of House Democrats have called for repealing fossil fuel industry subsidies in the upcoming reconciliation bill that lawmakers are now working on following the approval of the blueprint last week. So, as of course, the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill that is supposed to go along with the $550 billion bipartisan reconciliation, I'm sorry, not bipartisan reconciliation, but bipartisan bill on infrastructure that is being pushed by moderate Democrats or centrist Democrats. So now you have a bunch of Democrats that are more on the progressive side saying, no, we should get rid of fossil fuel subsidies. This is Representatives Ro Khanna, Ilhan Omar, Karen Maloney, as well as 51 other House Democrats that sent a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, as well as other party leaders. The letter highlights that in the fiscal year 2020 budget, President Biden commits to the inclusion of $121 billion in revenue raised from repealing fossil fuel subsidies, which includes $86 million from tax breaks for foreign oil and gas income. So basically they're saying, hey, look, that's a Biden priority, so it has to go into the reconciliation bill, or else you're against Biden's agenda. So understand that this is their attempt to push back against centrist Democrats or conservative, I should say more conservative Democrats, and they're framing on, oh, yeah, we can't spend too much and we can't do this, we can't do that. All right. So now in it, the letter says, we are greatly appreciative of the president's focus on repealing these harmful and wasteful subsidies. We support a deal that sufficiently enhances climate justice, especially in repealing fossil fuel subsidies. So now I can't imagine that fossil fuel, that giving Chevron and ExxonMobil money from our tax money is super popular with the American people. I would hazard a guess that it's incredibly unpopular. When people find out about it, they're like, why are we giving some of the most profitable corporations on earth money for doing something that they're already making a ton of money on? And by the way, the question is, of course, if we're giving them money, why are gas prices high? What is the deal with that? And to that, I mean, the only answer to that question is, of course, follow the money. It's all about greed. All about greed. So now, the letter also cited findings from the International Monetary Fund and the advocacy group Oil Change International. The letter points out that the U.S. ranks second in the world for supporting oil and gas companies, and federal and state governments give the fossil fuel industry over $20.5 billion in support each year through the tax code, inadequate royalty rates, and direct funding. That is a lot of money, again, going to incredibly profitable corporations. Such subsidies, they argue, are a bad deal for the American taxpayer, and that's true. For one, of course, we're giving money to these companies, but secondly, the product that they produce is incredibly harmful to the environment. Climate change. And so climate change, big deal, happening. It's not good. There are many bad things that are coming from this. Stronger storms, increasing floods, crazy weather, hotter temperatures, more forest fires, melting of the Arctic, permafrost, releasing old viruses, and methane pockets, which cause an increase ocean acidification as well. I mean, it's so many different things that can affect fisheries by having giant dead spots in the ocean where there is no oxygen anymore because the ocean has acidified so much. A lot of negative effects from this. Tons. And yet, they're polluting the environment, and now we're literally paying them through our tax money to do it. This is an outrage. And again, this has been an outrage for years. I remember talking about this years and years and years ago, where you have these companies, these incredibly profitable companies, that are getting all of this money, and it's like, why? Why? They still can't get rid of it. Through the Obama administration, through the Trump administration, and now into the Biden administration, and finally they're like, we got to get rid of these things. So now, speaking of tax money, by the way, these companies are continuing to be on the take. At least $8.2 billion in COVID pandemic relief funds went to these fossil fuel companies last year, and they ended up cutting about 16% of its workforce. Oops. You know what? They should give that money back. In fact, they should give all the money back. Everything we've ever given them. All right. For these reasons, the House Democrats concluded in the letter, we implore you to include the repeal of fossil fuel subsidies in the Build Back Better Act. So again, I agree with all of this, obviously, for the reasons that I've just laid out. There's no reason we should be handing money to these companies. But of course, you know, the biggest reason that we're doing this is because, well, our government's corrupt. The fossil fuel lobbyists have bought our politicians. You know, Joe Manchin, for example, who's literally the top recipient of oil and gas contributions in the Senate. Then you have corrupt Henry Cuellar, another Democrat who's being challenged by Jessica Cisneros in Texas. Many others that are on the take from the industry, and of course, as a result, the bidding of the industry. That's why Joe Manchin, for example, hates the reconciliation bill. Now, of course, he wants you to think, oh, it's about the cost. It's really expensive. Wow, I can't burden. Well, I'm not going to burden these kids with so much debt. Is that what it's about? Oh, it's the debt and the deficit. Nobody gives a goddamn. Only rich people care about the debt and deficit. Regular people don't. The working class doesn't. They actually want to get these things that are inside this bill. Child care, for example, an expansion of the current Medicare system. They want real things that will actually help their lives. Nobody gives a goddamn about your debts and deficits. Shove them up your ass. Okay? Now, again, corruption, right? Corruption. And speaking of corruption, The Hill is now reporting that business lobbyists are increasingly optimistic that they can water down the tax hikes and other measures in the final bill. So already, you knew it was going to happen. Here comes the lobbyists. Here comes the Chamber of Commerce. Their confidence, according to the article, was boosted last week by an agreement struck by Speaker Nancy Pelosi and 10 centrist House Democrats that ensures the September 27th vote on the bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure bill passed by the Senate earlier this month. By agreeing to a standalone vote, Pelosi had softened her stance that both bills must be passed together, a priority for progressives in her caucus. Business groups now see that as a huge win, believing that progressives will lose their leverage over components of the reconciliation package if the House passes the $1 trillion infrastructure bill first. And of course, that's how we lose. That's how you lose. Nancy Pelosi said she wasn't going to cave, and she caved. And by the way, the media spun this as a win because the media wants this. So, K Street, by the way, is also eager to flex this muscle on Democratic plans to expand Medicare, increase taxes on capital gains, eliminate tax deductions for fossil fuels, and allow the government to negotiate drug prices. So even the modest stuff that we're asking for that are in this, I mean, increasing taxes on capital gains, something that affects 0.1% of the population of the country. They're coming in there and we're going to get rid of it. Yeah. Yeah. Now let's get rid of those tax deductions for fossil fuels. Climate change, they don't care. They don't care. And by the way, they're dropping a ton of money against progressives in order to control the messaging. And this is what's really important, because the messaging, you're already going to see a blitz of like, the progressives are asking for too much. It's too expensive. We need to pare this thing down. And by the way, it is bankrolled by dark money groups like the one run by former Senator Heidi Heitkamp, one of the most corporate conservative Democrats that used to be in office. You remember everybody telling you that, oh no, we have to vote for the moderate Democrat. We can't vote for progressive because, the people will never go for progressive. Well, okay, when Heidi Heitkamp was challenged by a very conservative person. And she was like, I'm such a moderate. Look at me. I'm even conservative on these issues. You know what they did? They're like, yeah, that's great. We're going to choose a crazy conservative. It's almost as if like running as a Republican light doesn't work because they just choose a Republican. Weird. And now, of course, she is now announcing a 6-figure ad campaign opposing progressives. Specifically, opposing the Democrats' proposal to tax capital gains at death, a key source of funding for the spending plan. Not only that, but the pharmaceutical industry is also fighting a proposal that would allow Medicare to negotiate the price of prescription drugs, which would save the federal government about $456 billion over a decade, according to the CBO. So here we go. Progressives, we're outnumbered, meaning we may very well lose on these issues. Be prepared for it. And of course, it's not only the fact that progressives are outnumbered, of course, in Congress, which we absolutely are, but the money in politics is the biggest factor here. I mean, getting more progressives into Congress would be a good thing, as good as it would be. However, it's not the full solution. The full solution, of course, is to change the system. You got to get the money out. You got to kick out the lobbyists. You got to kick out the cronies. Make it illegal to lobby. Make it illegal to give campaign donations. If you're a corporation or a super PAC, get rid of them all. Public financing of elections. That's it. Because, unfortunately, right now, we can't hold these politicians accountable because they're not accountable to us. They're only accountable to their donors, not the real voters, not the people. And so, as a result, they have the most power. And that is, by the way, who is against progressives the most. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.